If angels are holy beings of light, then why did one rebel against the very throne of heaven? If they truly have free will, why haven't more followed the path of defiance? And if they don't, are they truly alive or merely divine instruments, moving without desire or choice? This is the question that echoes through ancient scrolls and forbidden corners of theology, the one too dangerous to ask aloud. Preachers avoid it, scholars dodge it, but you're about to face it head-on, the mystery of angelic will, hidden in plain sight. Because behind the veil of wings and glory lies a terrifying truth. The obedience of angels might not be holy, it might be programmed, and those who dared to choose, they shattered heaven itself and sparked a war that still rages today. Heaven is not governed by consensus. It is not a democracy of wings and halos. It is a monarchy where one will rules all. Angels do not deliberate. They do not vote. They carry out. With ranks established and roles assigned, each one moves in precise obedience, reflecting the perfection of divine command. There is order, not opinion. There is alignment, not autonomy. They do not waver in doubt or wrestle with conflicting thoughts. Michael does not strategize around God's orders, he executes them. Gabriel does not ponder the message, he delivers it. What appears to us as flawless loyalty may, in truth, be the absence of choice. It begs the question, is their obedience a gift of the will, or simply the outcome of divine engineering? Angels were created to serve, not to reflect. Unlike humanity formed in the image of God, bearing the burden and blessing of choice, angels are not creatures of volition, they are instruments of execution. Their identity is fused to function. They do not question their design. They move as they were made to move. They fulfill what they were born to fulfill. This is why heaven operates in perfect synchronization, not because each angel agrees, but because each one is designed to align. There is no rebellion, not because it is resisted, but because it is unthinkable. At least, it was. Until one angel shattered the stillness of obedience and exposed the hidden reality, the potential to choose had always been there. Lucifer was the crack in the crystal sky. His defiance proved that angels could choose, but at a terrible cost. His fall was not just a rebellion, but a revelation. It showed that beneath the perfect order, there was a possibility buried, restrained, but real. A possibility God had allowed for freedom means nothing if it cannot be used, even in defiance. Since that cosmic fracture, heaven's obedience has seemed absolute, but now it carries the memory of rebellion. It is not merely order, it is guarded order. Not just loyalty, but locked loyalty. The angels remain in place, not because they all lack will, but because the will to stray has been burned by consequence. Choice was once exercised, and heaven remembers. Lucifer was not created as a villain. He was the most radiant among the host of heaven, the seal of perfection, full of wisdom, clothed in beauty. Scripture says he walked among the fiery stones, adorned with every precious gem. His beginning was not cursed, it was glorious. He was not made to fall. He was made to reflect the brilliance of the Creator. But somewhere in that brilliance, something shifted. Ezekiel 28 declares, "Wickedness was found in you, not planted, not forced found. It emerged from within. No hand twisted his will. No power seduced him from outside." The rebellion began as a thought that said, "Why not me?" It was the birth of pride, the seed of self. Lucifer's fall wasn't a sudden accident. It was a decision layered, deliberate, and devastating. He chose elevation over submission. He chose the throne over the altar. Isaiah 14 records his declaration, "I will ascend, I will exalt, I will sit on the mount." These were not the words of a servant. They were the ambitions of a rebel king. And with that choice, the illusion shattered. Angels could choose. Heaven was not sealed against defiance. One will free and uncoerced had dared to rise against God, and the consequences were immediate. War erupted in heaven. Michael fought, Lucifer fell like lightning, and a third of the stars were swept from the sky, dragged down with him. This single act of rebellion cracked the foundation of cosmic order. It exposed the hidden risk within creation, that even those formed in light could burn with pride, that even those closest to the throne could desire it. Lucifer's fall wasn't just a personal betrayal, it was a theological earthquake, proof that heaven was not immune to fracture. The most terrifying truth of all, Lucifer didn't fall because he was weak. He fell because he was strong, because he could choose. His freedom made his fall possible. And if one angel could choose destruction, then the question lingers like smoke in the sanctuary. How many others hold that same latent power, yet remain silent? Lucifer's fall was the exception, but it set a precedent. It created a scar on the face of eternity. From that moment on, obedience was no longer assumed, it had to be watched. No longer was heaven untouched. A third of its number had proven that choice still existed, that free will, even if rare, was real and deadly in the hands of the exalted. When we speak of obedience, we often imagine devotion, a heartfelt surrender, a willing yes. But obedience in heaven isn't born from relationship. It's rooted in design. Angels do not wrestle with commandments, they execute. Their loyalty is not tested by struggle. It is embedded in their very nature, like breath in the lungs of man. Hebrews 1:14 calls angels ministering spirits, sent to serve. They are sent, not invited, assigned, not asked. Their identity is not formed by love or longing, but by commission. They don't become angels through transformation or growth. They are created with function baked into their essence. Obedience, for them, is not virtue, it is instinct. Unlike humans, who choose between good and evil each day, angels were not made for moral tension. They exist to carry out the will of God with absolute clarity. They don't doubt, they don't delay. Their minds do not wrestle between light and darkness. Their path is a line, not a fork. That's not freedom. That's alignment, perfect, but programmed. Humans are invited into covenant, into a bond that requires choice. Angels are given assignments. The difference is vast. A covenant means mutual commitment. It assumes the ability to walk away. But an assignment requires only execution. No dialogue, no decision, just action. This is the world angels inhabit, an existence of sacred order, not sacred intimacy. Love without choice is not love. Worship without freedom is not worship. Angels serve, but they do not inherit. They surround the throne, but they are not called sons. Their praise is thunderous, but it is not the cry of the redeemed. They do not understand grace. They do not know what it feels like to be lost and found. The obedience of angels is beautiful, but it's not like ours. They obey without knowing what rebellion costs. We obey because we've tasted both chains and freedom. Angels cannot repent. They cannot be redeemed. That's why when one falls, there is no restoration, no second chance, no Calvary for the celestial host, just judgment. The difference between covenant and command is eternal. One invites, the other assigns. One requires heart, the other structure. Angels, for all their glory, live within command. We, for all our weakness, are invited into covenant. That is the miracle. That is the scandal of grace, that beings born of dust can walk where angels fear to tread. When Lucifer fell, he did not fall alone. Revelation 12 says the dragon swept a third of the stars from heaven. These were not cosmic bodies, they were angels, beings who, like him, chose defiance. That moment marked a fracture so violent that heaven has never forgotten it. It wasn't just a rebellion, it was an outbreak of will where none was supposed to exist. The fall was not a test, it was a warning, a rupture in the design. Until then, the assumption was that angels obey because they cannot do otherwise. But now, the truth was exposed. They could choose. And choice, real, dangerous choice, had the power to shake eternity. That realization changed the fabric of the spiritual realm forever. After the rebellion, something shifted. A silence fell over heaven, not of peace, but of containment. Ancient Jewish traditions suggest that God, in his mercy and wrath, sealed the spiritual realm, cutting off access to that forbidden path of will. The remaining angels were no longer at risk, not because they were incapable, but because the doors had been locked. Just as the gates of Eden were sealed after Adam's fall, the boundaries of heaven were reinforced. The ability to choose rebellion had once existed, and it had cost dearly. No longer would that option remain accessible. Heaven could not risk another rupture. Obedience, once a rhythm, became a safeguard. Structure was tightened. Freedom was restrained. This was not punishment. It was preservation. If free will led to chaos among the stars, then limitation was mercy. The angels who remained were not stripped of their essence, but insulated from danger. Their wills aligned, not by lack of strength, but by divine sealing. The cosmos would no longer be subject to another celestial war. It's not that the angels were reprogrammed, but that their nature was brought into full unity with God's will. No longer torn between loyalty and ambition, they now existed in perfect harmony. Not because they forgot what had happened, but because they remembered. They had seen what became of the rebels, and they had no desire to follow. This spiritual lockdown created a new order in heaven, a purified system, a scarred perfection. Obedience was no longer merely the norm, it became the shield against another fall. Heaven still sang, still burned with glory. But beneath the praise was a memory, a whisper of what once tore through the stars, a whisper heaven would never allow again. If all angels were sealed into obedience, how do we explain the Watchers? These mysterious beings, described in the book of Enoch, defied heaven's order. They descended to earth, took human women as wives, and fathered hybrid giants known as the Nephilim. Their rebellion wasn't accidental, it was intentional, calculated, coordinated. These were not low-ranking spirits or confused messengers. They were leaders among the host. Their names were recorded. Their pact was written in blood and thunder. They made a conscious choice to break from their stations. Their story reveals something terrifying, that not all angels were fully sealed. Some still carried the power to choose and chose corruption. The sin of the Watchers wasn't simply lust. It was trespass, a crossing of realms. They left their proper domain, their sacred dwelling, and mingled with flesh. In doing so, they broke both spiritual law and cosmic boundaries. It was the second great rebellion, this time not in heaven, but on earth. And once again, judgment fell hard. The Nephilim, their offspring, were monstrous distortions, part angel, part man, fully fallen, giants of cruelty, tyrants of chaos. The flood in Noah's day wasn't just about human evil, it was about wiping out this contaminated bloodline. The Watchers had introduced something unnatural, something heaven never intended to exist. Jude 1:6 confirms their fate. It says the angels who abandoned their position were bound in everlasting chains, held for judgment, no second chance, no forgiveness. Their freedom to choose had been their downfall. They were not restored, they were locked away. Their punishment was as eternal as their rebellion was bold. This story forces us to confront a disturbing truth. There are still realms and beings beyond our view, capable of choice. Not all spiritual forces are under tight control. Some still slip through the cracks of divine restraint. Some still wander. Some still whisper. The Watchers remind us that the supernatural world is not as locked down as we'd like to believe. Even after Lucifer's fall, the seeds of rebellion remained buried deep within the spiritual world. The Watchers proved that it only takes one hidden spark to ignite a wildfire of corruption. Their existence reveals that the veil between obedience and defiance is thinner than we think, and not every angel behind it is silent. The Watchers were judged and bound, but what of the rest? What of the countless angels who remain at their posts? Radiant and unshaken, Scripture offers a haunting insight: they can no longer fall, not because they've been made mindless, but because their alignment is now absolute. Their wills have fused with the will of God, not by force, but by divine sealing. Jude 1:6 describes the fallen as imprisoned, restrained in chains until the day of judgment. But it says nothing of the loyal ones being chained. Their obedience isn't captivity, it's clarity. These angels are not trapped, they are illuminated. They've seen the consequences of defiance, and from that vision, their commitment has been purified by fear and reverence. Heaven no longer tolerates risk. The war with Lucifer, the descent of the Watchers, these were cosmic tremors. Now, the spiritual order has become unshakable by design. The remaining angels are no longer simply obedient, they are bound by revelation. They have beheld what rebellion does to glory, and that memory keeps them closer to the throne than any command. They are not free in the way we define freedom. They are free within holiness, free within eternal purpose. Their choices are not erased, but they are absorbed into something higher. They no longer desire to choose anything other than God's will. It is not that they lack power to rebel, it is that rebellion has lost all appeal. In this lies a mystery. The angels did not become incapable, they became incorruptible. Not through force, but through exposure. They witnessed the heavens tear open, the stars fall, the glory fade. They heard the cries of the bound. They remember the silence that followed. And now, every act of obedience carries that memory like a flame. Their loyalty is no longer tested, it is sealed. Their devotion is not merely function, it is forged. Like gold refined by fire, their wills have been tempered into something eternal. They stand in the presence of God not only as servants, but as witnesses to the price of pride. Their worship is fierce because it knows what was nearly lost. The angels that remain cannot fall, not because they are lesser than those who did, but because they have been transformed by truth. They have chosen once and for all, and now they are not creatures of potential, they are creatures of purpose. Their obedience is no longer a duty, it is their identity. It is what makes them burn without ever being consumed. For all their glory, angels were never promised a throne. They shine like lightning, move like wind, and tremble in the presence of God, but they are not heirs. They serve the King, but they will never reign beside him. Hebrews 2 makes it clear the world to come is not subject to angels, but to those redeemed by blood, those born again of spirit. This is the staggering mystery of grace, that fragile, sinful humanity is being lifted to a place angels were never offered. We fall, we rise, we choose, and yet we are crowned with mercy. Angels obey by nature, but we obey by decision. They serve from design, we serve from love. That difference is what separates servants from sons. Angels surround the throne, but we are being prepared to sit near it, not by merit, not by strength, but by redemption. Our journey is not one of flawless obedience, but of transformation. Each scar, each fall, each prayer has shaped us into beings that heaven watches with wonder. We are the miracle they were never given. That's why 1 Peter says the gospel is something even angels long to look into. They do not understand redemption. They cannot taste forgiveness. They've never felt the embrace after being lost. We have, and it is that very experience, the agony of choice and the glory of restoration, that gives us a place they cannot claim. While angels fight, proclaim, and minister, we are being conformed to the image of Christ. That is not service, that is inheritance. Not simply obedience, but union. We are not just tools of heaven. We are its future rulers. We are not flames of fire. We are sons and daughters, seated in heavenly places, marked not with light, but with blood. They obey because they were made to. We obey because we love. That is what makes our devotion more dangerous and more powerful. A being who cannot fall cannot truly choose. But a soul that has wandered and returns is a force that even angels pause to witness. Heaven celebrates not over the obedient, but over the redeemed. In the end, the angels will still stand, but we will rise. The throne room will still thunder with wings and praise. But those who chose Christ in the midst of chaos will rule with him, not because we were stronger, but because we were chosen and chose him in return. That is the scandal of grace. That is the inheritance of the dust-born. Free will is the most dangerous gift ever given. It built angels, and it broke them. It crowned Lucifer with beauty and cast him down in shame. It created love and made betrayal possible. And now, that same gift has been placed in your hands, not by accident, but by design. What you do with it echoes beyond time. You were not created to merely serve. You were created to reign, to choose light even when surrounded by darkness, to obey not by programming but by love. Heaven watches not just your actions, but your choices. Every quiet surrender, every battle won in secret is a sound louder than angelic trumpets before the throne. The angels burn with fire, but they have never felt the weight of sin forgiven. They tremble before God, but they do not know what it means to be called his child. That is your inheritance. That is your mystery. That is your crown. And if you understand that, you carry something that angels marvel at, the courage to love freely. So choose today with full awareness. Choose not because you must, but because you are free. Choose not out of fear, but out of awe. Choose the narrow road, the unseen kingdom, the eternal calling, because your will surrendered to him becomes a weapon far more powerful than any sword of heaven. If this truth stirred something inside your spirit, comment below. I choose to obey freely. Let heaven record your choice. Let others be awakened by your declaration. Subscribe to this channel for more truths they never taught you. And share this message because someone you love still believes obedience is slavery, when in truth, it's the doorway to glory.